What's the broader cultural context? Like, where are the rabbis getting this from?
So I love this question. This feels weird, right? This feels weird. And I think for a lot of people, for a lot of reasons, we look at some of the weirder stuff and we say, well, this can't really be rabbinic. This got to come from someplace else. Why can't this be the rabbis being weird? We don't have parallel evidence for this in Zoroastrian texts. Zoroastrian texts never describe doing something an even number of times as provoking or demonically dangerous. In fact, in a number of Zoroastrian texts, doing something in pairs is a way to protect yourself from demons. We don't have Christian texts from this time period, from the Syriac Christian world, that are discussing this and describing it as dangerous. Same thing with Manichaean and Mandean texts. I haven't read all of those. Not everything is published or accessible, but what I've been able to read doesn't seem to have a concern about doing things in even numbers. We also don't see that concern in earlier Babylonian, Assyrian, Sumerian, Akkadian traditions.
This definitely took a turn that I was not expecting. I totally was expecting, oh yeah, totally parallel stuff, but this is unique. Certainly within the cultural context.
There is a parallel to this.
Okay.
But it's not from the Sasanian world. So yeah, I know. Everyone's like, oh, this must be Sasanian because it's weird. And that's not what you meant, but we sort of think the things that aren't familiar must be strange.
The Israeli, the Palestinian sources don't have that. They're not concerned about this. This is distinctly Persian.
This is
at least the Persian Jews.
Well, and here's what's so right. This is profoundly Babylonian because the rabbis are Babylonian, right? So it's not that it is Babylonian because the rabbis live there, not because the rabbis are getting it from other Babylonians. It's Babylonian because they're Babylonian. Curiously, we do have a parallel to the rabbinic idea, and that's a parallel which is found not in the Sasanian world at all. It's actually found in Greek philosophy. So Plato associated even numbers with inferior things, ill omens, and the gods of the underworld. And he said, anything that's in even numbers is unworthy of being offered to the Olympian gods. Now, Plutarch, who is a later Greek philosopher in the line of Plato, says that he assumes that, he writes that Plato assigns to the Olympian gods right-hand qualities and odd numbers, and to the daimones or demons, the opposite of these. And then Plutarch goes on to quote another Greek philosopher whose name is Xenocrates, who we don't have Xenocrates, we only have Plutarch's quote, so take that for what it's worth. But he says that the even numbered days are inappropriate for anything relating to honoring the gods, and that anything even numbers is particularly attractive to negative gods and forces. So that's the only ancient parallel we have. And that's from the Roman Empire. And this is the same Greek and Roman philosophers who so much of Western tradition look to as the foundation of insert thing here.
I was just thinking about, as I was going back, quickly going through the sugya, it's an anxiety by the third and fourth generation Amoraim, and it continues fifth and sixth, but we don't really see that in the first couple of generations. And I'm also totally differently, but I have also in the back of my mind, like Ben Sira, the book of Ben Sira, through Greek sources, ultimately got by the third, fourth generation. Of Amoraim, it got there. So I wonder if at some point, end of the third century, it's sort of all these Greek stuff got trafficked in. Yeah,
well, and so this is Richard Kalman's argument in his book Migrating Tales. This is like
read it, but
so in his book he demonstrates fairly clearly that it's in the third and fourth generation when all of these Greek traditions make their way into Sasanian Babylonia.
All right.